Gotta find my live stream. Link to stream. All right. So this is how we're gonna do it today. I'm pretty excited about this, and I think, should I hit record or should I just let Substack do it? I think I'm gonna hit record so I can get higher quality. And so I'm talking about multi-streaming today, and that's really the idea that I wanted to get into things. Let me double check that the sound is working, just in case. Okay, it is. So live streaming is something I'm still getting used to, but I love content creation tools. And I've been looking at a variety of different kind of creator tools in a while, and I found that when I talk about tools, people seem to have this weirdness about multi-streaming, because there's the topic of why you should multi-stream and like that you should just do it, and then there's also the topic of how do you do it and what tools can you use. And so this is so frustrating to me, because I went on Reddit one day, even talked about it, and was just saying like, hey guys, you need to multi-stream more, here's some tools to do it. And they're like, oh, you're just shilling Meld Studios. Like, no, I just want you guys to do more. And so there's a tool for everybody, right? Now, you might be more along the lines of just using OBS, or if you're on Mac, you can use Ecamm, which are two of the most popular tools on the market. I would definitely stay away from StreamYard, despite the fact it is still kind of in a weird place where it fits a niche that's really useful. It syndicates for you. It also has a lot of like animations, like lower thirds. If I wanted to bring up a person's chat, I could do that, and so people could see what they said. That's cool. You can do that with other tools too, just it's a little bit more complicated. Technically speaking, you can use tools like Riverside to do multi-streaming, which is good for interviews. That's about it. And also it's just expensive, and they limit your FPS, and they don't have as many like animations and stuff like that. And I'm not really too confident in their ability to multi-stream like successfully every time. So given the fact that like during the calls I've had over the years, there's been some real big delays. So I worry that the cloud streaming will probably not be as strong as some other tools. And then there's also Restream.io, one of the kind of oldest tools in the market. I think it's one of the worst tools on the market, even though it's one of the only syndicating tools, because they don't update anything. And the CEO likes to trash talk other companies too on social media, and it's just like, no, I'm not going to support you. So between StreamYard having its own issues, where they screwed over a lot of their workers and they got rid of like 40% of their staff, they increased the cost like monumentally, and so unless you had like a lifetime deal, it's not really worth using. And then like Restream only does horizontal videos, no vertical videos, which that's kind of really important in the modern era. And so there is a variety of tools, all of which I have mentioned so far, not really that useful. OBS is probably the best one for most people, despite the fact it's most complicated. It's probably the most complicated tool, but once you figure it out, it's not that bad. It's the most powerful, and you have so many plugins you can use. So there's two plugins right out the bat that I want to mention. There's Atom and Stream Elements, both of which allow you to multi-stream within OBS. However, it does not syndicate for you. So your computer and your internet need to be strong enough to be able to syndicate to multiple different platforms. Now, that is great, and I'll probably get around to using that more again, especially since Stream Elements I think has some of the best like chat combined features. That is another issue when it comes to multi-streaming, is being able to syndicate all your chats into one place. You can see Twitch and YouTube and TikTok and all their chats. What a lot of people end up doing is using one tool like OBS for horizontal platforms, and they might be skipping Instagram vertical and YouTube Shorts vertical. They might be streaming to YouTube horizontally, but they're skipping the YouTube Shorts vertical, and I'll explain why in a minute. And they really do want to stream on TikTok. But TikTok has an issue where you have to have enough followers, which isn't too hard to grow on there, but it is annoying because you can't get the stream key from TikTok. So you can use TikTok Live Studio, which allows you to stream directly to TikTok, or you can use Stream Elements, because they have a partnership, and I think Streamlabs, not Stream Elements. Stream Elements might have a partnership. I think they might. But Streamlabs has a partnership with them, and they're also one of the other tools. Now, Streamlabs is interesting because there is some history with that tool where they were prolifically stealing ideas from other companies. Their like Lightstream thing was like very much like word for word copy from another tool. Their Talk Studio was kind of a copy of Riverside, although technically speaking, that kind of spun off of a different tool that they had purchased, which was called Type Studio. And so, technically speaking, they didn't really steal much, but it was kind of interesting. CrossClip was a pretty much blatant ripoff of Join Combo when that was still around, because Join Combo was kind of the first gaming clipping tool. However, CrossClip did a way better job, and I even told the founder of Join Combo, like, hey, you can't handle ultra wide video. Come on, like, and also CrossClip was a lot more stable a lot of the time. And so there was a lot of like tools they had copied. They blatantly ripped off the OBS name, which they called it Streamlabs OBS. And OBS was like, hey, don't do that. Like, we understand that you're forking our software. That's fine, but don't steal our name. And that was a big like no for a lot of people. They also like I said, the Lightstream website that they had made was like word for word almost copying the tool that they had stolen from. They essentially apologized, and I can also look past that myself personally, because as a content creator, I just want my job to be easier. If I have to use Streamlabs to accomplish a goal, I'm going to do it. Especially because they are probably, I hate saying this, like on paper, they're probably the most ideal tool. And let me explain why, because I'm still probably not going to use them for everything, but I want to explain this. Streamlabs is one of the only tools that can do syndication. Restream is the only other one that can do syndication right now. I was incorrect in the past, where I was told through the grapevine that multi-meld, it's like multi.meld.co or something like that, I think it's a URL, was a syndication service. And in reality, it is just it is technically a syndication service, but you still need to have you're still doing the streaming yourself. And so I was told that this was one thing and it wasn't, and I think that was just through tweets and chats, and so it was one of those things where I got confused. So Meld Studio is what I'm using right now to stream this, because I had to use a client on my desktop to stream on desktop for Substack, because I don't want to use mobile. However, I am just streaming to one place. Meld has a multi-streaming feature like the Stream Elements or Atom plugins for OBS built into it. So I could be streaming to YouTube right now and to Twitter or whatever RNTP that I want. But given that I don't trust my internet right now, actually the internet's not really so much an issue. It's more of the computer that I'm more worried about. However, it's an older octa-core. It should technically be able to handle it because there's multiple cores to be able to syndicate, and I have fiber internet, which has been phenomenally fast. So I should be able to multi-stream with my current setup or even a different computer setup. It's fine. But right now, I'm just focused on Substack, so I'm not worried about it right now, for this endeavor at least. But for gaming, I really do want to multi-stream, and so I'm getting more and more comfortable doing that. And I actually streamed for over an hour this morning for State of Decay onto Twitch. I'm not multi-streaming yet, but it's because it's built into Xbox, and Twitch is like the main one they have on there. Technically, I could stream to Streamlabs and set that up and have it ping to here, then to there. I can do it, but that's neither here nor there. My point being is that Streamlabs is one of the only tools that has vertical built into it. So like OBS doesn't have vertical built into it. You have to use one of the two plugins, which they're great plugins. And actually Atom technically works more often, but Stream Elements has more features. So there's kind of a balance there. And maybe it's actually kind of better to use like the Stream Elements chat with the Atom multi-streaming plugin. Try that. But the idea of just having it all built in one, like Meld, is really cool. So I'm really hoping that Meld works on their multi-streaming capabilities for syndication. Like I want to build this. I'd probably pay for that, to be honest, because that's probably what I'm going to do with Streamlabs, is pay for them. I'm not going to pay the $40-$50 a month for Restream, because if you pay like the $15 plan on Restream, it's only like 3 destinations. You only get like one extra destination than the free plan. It's stupid. And then on top of that, they have like a $50 plan, but the $50 a month plan only gives you 5 destinations. You need like 8 nowadays. Let's get into that whole rabbit hole. If you are multi-streaming and you want to reach as many platforms as possible, particularly for gamers, like this is mostly geared towards gamers in this particular point, but if you are a podcaster or a YouTuber, you should listen closely too, because what the gamers do is what the podcasters often do later on. I've seen that dynamic happen a lot of the time. So if you are a gamer, let's say the vertical platforms first, YouTube, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts particularly, Instagram, and TikTok. Cool. Horizontal, Twitch, Kick, YouTube, presumably Facebook if you want to get into that. maybe Caffeine, maybe DLive, maybe Trovo. There's so many other platforms you could be syndicating to, and every time you spread out, yes, it makes things more complicated. I've seen some big creators talk about how like you should be focused on one, or maybe just do a few, so that way you're not like spreading yourself too thin. But by just syndicating, you're not spreading yourself too thin. You can say that your main platform's Kick. That's not a big deal. You can tell people like, hey, if you want to interact with me, come on the Kick. But if you want to watch me, at least you can watch me on those platforms. But you are spreading your content as much as possible. And while most of these live streaming platforms don't really have any discoverability besides like YouTube and TikTok, you are still gonna have a minor amount of discoverability on Kick or on Trovo. And if you are streaming a game that other people are not streaming on Trovo or Kick, which is very much like the case where you could be streaming something brand new that no one has been streaming on there yet, and someone's probably going to be searching for it at some point, meaning you are going to be filling a niche that they are not getting filled yet because they're small enough platforms. Twitch and YouTube, probably not as much. Like, even there's a game I want to stream here that I just got a demo key for, that because I backed it on Kickstarter. I presume pretty much no one's streaming it right now, and the ones who are going to be getting all the attention. And so at some point, like probably this week, I'm going to try to do that. And you're basically captivating that attention that's very needed at that moment. And so that is my point. That's like 8 different platforms you want to be streaming to as a gamer. But even if you're just a content creator, a podcaster, you still want to be doing Facebook, especially actually more so than the gamers. You should be probably wanting to do Facebook. More importantly than that, you should be on Twitch and YouTube. That's already 3 horizontal platforms right there. I don't think Kick is very important for just chatting streams or something like that, but I think some people are still doing pretty well with just chatting streams on Kick. So I wouldn't necessarily knock it, really. And then you should also be horizontally streaming at the same time as vertically streaming on YouTube. The one thing is, it's kind of like Substack, where every time you do a new stream, you have to copy the stream key into your tool, which is frustrating. So every time I do one of these Substack streams, I have to copy the key over to my tool and replace it on the actual tool. Not a huge deal, but if you're trying to do YouTube vertical and horizontal, you can only do one automatically. The other one has to be manual. And that is frustrating. I wish YouTube would fix that. It's been like that for the last year. That's one reason why I haven't been actually multi-streaming as much. So, kind of surprised no one has really come in and left much comments. Like, I've had a few viewers here and there, but that's about it. Let me take a water break. Now, a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about, I wanted to save for a particular episode about multi-streaming. I have a few episodes coming down the line, but this gives me practice, essentially, of how I want to formulate my thoughts when it comes to those episodes. Like, I almost had it half in my mind where I'm live streaming right now. I might cut this out into an episode, but really, I think it'd just be nice to have it on its own. I don't normally email people either about the live streams. I want to live stream every day, but I felt like this particular live stream was actually very important, this is one of the only ones I've emailed out of the 4 or 5 I've done on Substack so far. I've only done, I think the first one is the one I emailed, and that is mainly because I wanted to not spam my audience since I'm going to be posting a lot anyways. But I figured, this particular episode, I'm going to be making specific Content Polymath episodes on. I'm going to record special episodes for multi-streaming, like why and how you should do it, kind of like what I talked about today. The next one after that is actually going to be multi-streaming for podcasters, and I think that's going to be a really interesting angle because a lot of people are not talking about it. Now, there's people who, like Russ Johns, who did the Pirate broadcast. He was live streaming all his episodes, and even his strategy was kind of limited when it came to multi-stream. I think he was using StreamYard. A lot of the podcasters who want to live stream their episodes, they're limited by the tool that they're using, which is StreamYard. Most of them. A handful that I've seen have been using Ecamm. I think Ecamm still has a little bit of limitations. I think vertically, for example, or something like that. But since I don't have Mac, I don't know for sure. I can't use it. But I want to just mention that to people who are on here, because if you're using Ecamm, you love it, that's great. In fact, I really support you. If I could use Ecamm, I probably would too, at least for my podcasting stuff. But since I can't, I want to also just mention that there's other tools out there. You should try them out. I believe in having a multi-tool stack. I'm going to be using Meld Studio for pretty much all my recordings and a lot of my live streaming. However, I probably won't be using it much for multi-streaming unless I'm doing it for solo episodes. Like right now, this is solo. I might be live streaming this by myself. Cool. I don't think I'm going to have a guest on this particular tool. If I wanted to use a guest on Meld, I would have to use Video Ninja, which I mentioned in my last post on this Substack. But I haven't really played around with that tool very much, and so I don't know how good it is. I've only used it as a guest like once or twice, and so it's just one of those things where I don't know if I can really rely on that continuously for like interviews. But maybe I can. Maybe I get used to it. I might start using it more often because that's better than using like Riverside sometimes. But for now, when I use Riverside, I'll use that for interviews. But that's pre-recorded. If I want to do live interviews, that's where things get a little bit more messy. Maybe I'll use Meld Studio and syndicate it to Substack, syndicate it to, let's say, like YouTube and Facebook. And then on top of that, if I want to do live streaming for gaming, which I do want to do, I would probably use something like Streamlabs. As much as I don't want to use Streamlabs because of their corporate history and overall just like the UI is not ideal. I'm not a fan of the UI on there. Functionally speaking, it's one of the only tools that's going to get the job done. I don't want to have to rely on my computer and internet to syndicate 8 streams. So I'm still wanting a tool like Meld. Please, if you're watching this, like give me a multi-streaming syndication service. I know Multi-Meld was sort of on the first step to that, so please continue it. And if you think I'm wrong in how I'm explaining it, then correct me down in the comments down below. And so besides Streamlabs, StreamYard, technically Restream if you're only doing horizontal, there's no syndication service. There was a new one that someone pointed out to me recently. Let me see if I can find it real quick because I want to make sure I don't forget all the different tools. Let's see. Darter Hay, and it's called Restreamer. And I'm going to put it down in the comments here below. And Restreamer is a self-hosting server. So again, it's still relying on your own internet, but this is kind of like you could have it on a separate PC as a server for you. Like it's called really nice and free alternative for handling live streams. And so it's an easy to use open source video server and AV framework for free video live streaming. So it helps you syndicate it using a separate computer. Technically speaking, if you just have a separate computer in the first place, that's what a lot of people do, is where they'll have a gaming computer for their main thing and then they'll use a second computer for streaming. But again, that kind of still relies on having one of your own computers doing a syndication service. Now, I really think that that's pretty much all that I wanted to talk about today on this multi-streaming thing. If you want to reach the widest audience as possible, if you want to take the polymathic approach, you should be multi-streaming, and you should be multi-streaming to as many platforms as possible. I've seen a couple big creators say that you should not do it too much. I even interviewed somebody who said that they don't want to do too many platforms because they don't want to spread themselves too thin. I don't see it like that. Just because you're syndicating to those platforms doesn't mean you have a responsibility to always be on those platforms. I syndicate all of my written posts to Twitter, Mastodon, Blue Sky, Threads, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I rarely go on my Facebook page. I rarely go on my Twitter feed. I don't ever go on my Mastodon feed. Sometimes I go out of my way to check Blue Sky. I go on Threads a lot. I go on LinkedIn a lot. I'm going to be more active on those platforms, and I'm open about that. And if you want to find me, I'll probably see a DM on Twitter eventually, but it's not the best way to get out to me, right? And I don't really make it clear that, like, I'm not going to really be on Twitter very much, especially after all the echo chamber BS that you have to deal with on there after time. And so my point is, though, like, just because I'm syndicating those platforms and sending stuff out doesn't mean I'm going to be going on and consuming and reaching out to other people through those platforms. So if you are syndicating your multi-stream to Trovo, doesn't mean I'm going to be on Trovo as a user or even going on there. If it's too much work to syndicate the Trovo chat with my main multi-stream chat, then I'm not going to do it. And I'm sorry for the people who are coming into my stream on Trovo, but at least you get to see the stream. That's kind of my mindset on it. Like, yes, I am not necessarily being the greatest host to that particular platform, but I will go out of my way to try to make sure I include it, right? If I can have a multi-chat that has all the platforms in one chat, then I'm going to try to do that. But I'm going to probably focus mostly on Kick. And actually, besides Kick, YouTube Shorts. Those are the two platforms as a gamer that I want to focus on most, which is interesting because I would rather focus on YouTube Shorts over YouTube Horizontal. And one last little thing to note before I wrap up here, I think that a lot of podcasters really limit themselves by only watching other podcasters. I, as a content creator, have interviewed 200 different creators at this point, and that's why I made the PolyTools Creator Spotlight, link on my Substack, by the way, where I interviewed other creators. And one of the things I wanted to do, the one thing that makes my show unique compared to other creator interview shows, is that I take in all types of creators, the podcasters, the live streamers, the YouTubers, the bloggers, the Substackers, the TikTokers. I don't care where you are mainly based or what kind of main content you make. I want to hear from you. I interviewed somebody before just the other day that wasn't nearly much more than a short form content creator, but the way she handles her business, the way she handled her content business and personal branding was unique. And I thought that was an interesting thing to explore. And so I'm trying to get as many unique perspectives as possible. And the reason being is that a lot of the habits that I've seen a lot of podcasters do, such as at the beginning of the podcast interview, they have those highlight reels. Like, here's the most interesting questions that get asked or answers that get answered. And here's the thing. They stole that from the gamers. The gamers did that first. Dream, for example, the Minecraft streamer, did that first. He was one of the first ones to come up with that style. And I'm sure that, like, yes, like on TV back in the 80s, there was some sort of equivalent to that. But in the online ecosystem, in the online world, that was unique. And it was the gamers who came up with that idea first with their type of content, long-form content. And then the podcasters copied it. And now I'm seeing the same thing happen with multi-streaming. Guess who I saw do the vertical of YouTube and the horizontal on YouTube at the same time? Pokemon gaming streamers. That's who I saw first. That was the niche that I saw do it first. They were the ones that did the vertical live streaming at the same time as horizontal live streaming on the same platform. And then I started seeing some other streamers do it, like some shooter FPS streamers. And I'm starting to see a trickling of podcasts doing it, but hardly anybody is. This is a good time right now to take advantage of that. And that's why I wanted to make this video, and that's why I'm going to make some hosts here in the near future about multi-streaming, because I think a lot of people are missing out on this opportunity that is right there in front of us. That's it. Thank you.